Captain Jake Morrison stood at the bridge window of the USV Dakota, watching dozens of alien warships glide through space around Nexus Station. Their hulls shimmered with energy shields that bent light in rainbow patterns. Some ships moved so fast they left trails of blue fire behind them. Others floated like graceful dancers, turning and spinning without any visible engines. The Dakota looked like a flying brick next to them. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Kalari flagship," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her communications post. Her voice carried a hint of embarrassment that she tried to hide. Morrison nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Zephyx of the crystalline Kalari Empire. The alien's body looked like it was made of living diamonds, each facet catching and reflecting the bridge lights. When Zephyx spoke, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Captain Morrison," Zephyx said, and Morrison could hear the amusement in his tone. "I trust your vessel will be able to keep up with our formation. Perhaps you should consider joining the supply convoy instead. It moves at a more suitable pace for your technology." Behind Zephyx, Morrison could see other Kalari officers. Their crystal faces didn't show expressions the way human faces did, but their bodies vibrated in a way that Morrison had learned meant they were laughing. "We'll manage, Admiral," Morrison replied, keeping his voice steady. "The Dakota has some surprises." "I'm sure it does," Zephyx said. The screen went dark. Commander Lisa Hayes, the Dakota's tactical officer, turned from her station. Her jaw was tight with anger. "Sir, that's the third time today. The Thrix delegation actually asked if we were a museum ship. They wanted to know if humans still used gunpowder." Morrison looked around his bridge. Every face showed the same frustration. For 6 months, the Dakota had been part of the Galactic Defense Coalition. For 6 months, every alien species had treated them like children playing with toys. "Chief, Collins, report to the bridge," Morrison said into his communicator. Chief Engineer Ryan Collins arrived 2 minutes later, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He was a big man with kind eyes and hands that could fix anything. "You called, Captain? How are our special modifications coming along?" Collins glanced around the bridge, then stepped closer to Morrison. "All systems are ready, sir. The external scans show exactly what we want them to show. Old-style armor plating, basic fusion drives, and simple kinetic weapons. They have no idea what we're really carrying." Dr. Helen Carter looked up from her science station. She was young for her position, but her mind was one of the sharpest Morrison had ever encountered. "Captain, I've been studying the alien ship designs. They're all built around the same basic idea: energy shields, plasma weapons, and speed. Every single one." "And that's a problem?" asked Weapons Officer Kevin Park. He was new to the Dakota, transferred from Earth just 3 months ago. He still looked excited every time he touched his control panels. "Maybe," Carter said. "They all think the same way. Fast ships, energy weapons, flashy shields. But what happens when you face an enemy that doesn't follow those rules?" Morrison nodded. Earth's military planners had asked the same question when they designed the Dakota. While other species raced to build faster, prettier ships, humans had focused on different problems. What if speed wasn't the answer? What if energy shields weren't enough? What if the enemy could adapt to energy weapons? The bridge speakers crackled with an announcement from Nexus Station's control center. "All Coalition vessels, prepare for fleet formation briefing. Admiral Thiss will address the combined forces in 1 hour." Morrison watched through the window as ships began moving into formation. The ethereal vessels moved like liquid light, flowing from one position to another without seeming to accelerate. The insectoid Thrix ships buzzed around like angry wasps, their hulls gleaming black and green. The reptilian Sauros flew in perfect triangular formations, their red and gold hulls marking them as elite warriors. And there, at the very back of the formation, sat the Dakota. Alone. "Sir?" Foster said quietly. "The other human ships in the Coalition are requesting permission to form up with us." Morrison shook his head. "Tell them to maintain their assigned positions. We knew this would happen." It was true. When Earth had been invited to join the Galactic Defense Coalition, They had been honest about their technology level. Humans were newcomers to space. They didn't have energy shields or plasma cannons or faster-than-light communication. What they had were solid ships, kinetic weapons, and brains that worked differently than anyone else's. The Coalition had accepted them anyway, mostly out of politeness. Earth controlled several important trade routes, and human merchants were becoming valuable partners. But nobody expected much from human warships. Hayes pulled up a tactical display showing the Coalition fleet. Over 2,000 ships from 47 different species, all arranged in a complex formation that looked like a three-dimensional flower. The fastest, most advanced ships formed the outer petals, ready to strike and retreat. The slower, heavier ships made up the inner layers. The Dakota wasn't even on the main tactical display. It was listed with the support vessels, supply ships, medical frigates, and repair drones. "Captain," Park said, studying his weapons console, "I've been running diagnostics on our kinetic systems. Everything checks out perfectly. Range, accuracy, penetration power, all optimal." Morrison smiled. The Dakota's weapons looked simple from the outside, just metal tubes that fired metal projectiles. No energy beams, no exotic matter, no reality warping fields. But the specifications hidden in those simple tubes would have surprised every alien in the fleet. "Sir," Carter said, her voice suddenly tense. "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors. It's big." Morrison moved to her station. "Show me." The display showed empty space at first, but Carter adjusted the sensors and enhanced the signal. Slowly, shapes began to appear at the very edge of detection range. Dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "How big?" Morrison asked. Carter's fingers flew over her controls, refining the readings. "I count at least 800 contacts, sir. Maybe more. Some of them are massive. Bigger than anything in our fleet." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Void Reapers were coming. Morrison had read every file Earth's intelligence services had gathered on the Reapers. They were the galaxy's nightmare, a species that consumed entire star systems, turning matter and energy into more ships, more weapons, more death. They had appeared from beyond the galactic rim 50 years ago, and nothing had been able to stop them. "Foster, send a priority transmission to Admiral Theiss," Morrison ordered. "Long-range sensors have detected the Reaper advance force." As Foster worked, Morrison looked out at the Coalition fleet again. All those beautiful, fast, advanced ships. All those energy shields and plasma weapons and sophisticated technologies. He wondered if they would be enough. Deep in the Dakota's hull, hidden behind layers of simple-looking armor and basic-seeming systems, humanity's real contribution to the Coalition waited in darkness. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what humans could do when they stopped trying to copy everyone else and started being themselves. 3 days later, the Coalition fleet moved through space like a metal storm. Over 2,000 warships spread across millions of kilometers, each one glowing with the light of their energy shields. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the Dakota's bridge watching the formation through the main view screen. The Kepler defense line stretched before them, a region of space where two spiral arms of the galaxy came close together. Any enemy fleet trying to reach the inner worlds would have to pass through this narrow corridor. It was the perfect place for a trap. "Captain," Dr. Helen Carter called from her science station, "I'm getting more detailed readings on the Reaper fleet. The numbers are worse than we thought." Morrison walked over to her station. Carter's face was pale as she showed him the sensor data. "How much worse?" "I count 837 ships," Carter said quietly, "including 12 dreadnoughts that are each larger than our biggest battleships. Sir, some of these vessels are over 10 kilometers long." Morrison studied the display. Each dot represented a ship that could probably destroy the Dakota without effort. But what worried him more were the energy signatures Carter was detecting. "Their technology is different this time," Carter continued. "These readings don't match any previous encounters with the Reapers. They've adapted." Across the fleet, Admiral Theiss of the Luminari took command from his flagship, the Starfire. The Luminari were beings made of pure energy, and their ships moved like living light through space. Theiss had fought the Reapers before and won, The Coalition trusted him to do it again. The battle plan was simple. The fastest ships would strike first, using hit-and-run tactics to damage the Reaper fleet. Energy weapons would overload their systems while the main force stayed back. If the first wave succeeded, the heavier ships would move in to finish the job. The Dakota wasn't part of either wave. Morrison had received his orders that morning. Stay with the support ships far from the main battle. Protect the medical frigates and supply vessels. Don't get in the way. Sir, Commander Lisa Hayes said from her tactical station, the advanced scouts are reporting contact with the enemy. Battle will commence in 30 minutes. Morrison nodded. Around the bridge, his crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew they would probably just watch this battle from a distance. Every other ship in the fleet was faster, more advanced, better equipped for modern warfare. Chief Engineer Ryan Collins entered the bridge carrying a tablet computer. Captain, I've finished the final checks on our special systems. Everything is ready if we need it. Morrison lowered his voice. How long to bring everything online? 15 minutes from your order, sir, Collins replied. The aliens will never see it coming. Through the view screen, Morrison could see the first wave of Coalition ships accelerating toward the enemy. Kalari vessels sparkled like diamonds as they charged their crystal cannons. Ethereal ships flowed forward like liquid starlight. Thrix, fighters buzzed around the larger vessels like angry insects. First contact in 10 minutes, Hayes announced. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communications console. Sir, I'm monitoring fleet communications. All ships report ready for battle. Morrison watched the tactical display as hundreds of ships prepared to fight. Each species had brought their best technology. Energy shields that could stop anything. Plasma weapons that could melt through solid metal. Sensors that could track a single molecule across light years. But Morrison remembered something his grandfather had told him long ago. His grandfather had been a soldier in Earth's last global war, before humans reached the stars. Boy, the old man had said, fancy equipment is nice, but it's not what wins fights. What wins fights is thinking different than the other guy. Contact, Hayes shouted. The view screen switched to a long-range view of the battle. The Coalition's first wave hit the Reaper fleet like a wave of light. Energy beams lanced out across space, striking the dark hulls of enemy ships. For a moment, Morrison thought the plan was working. Then everything went wrong. The Reaper ships didn't explode when the energy beams hit them. Instead, their hulls seemed to absorb the attacks, growing brighter as they fed on the Coalition's weapons. The energy shields that protected the Coalition ships flickered and died as strange fields projected from the Reaper vessels tore through them. What's happening? Morrison demanded. Carter's fingers flew over her controls. The Reapers have some kind of adaptive technology. Their hulls are converting our energy attacks into power for their own systems. And those field projectors, they're disrupting the quantum foundations of our shield technology. On the view screen, Morrison watched in horror as Kalari ships exploded one after another. Their crystal hulls, so beautiful and strong, shattered like glass under the Reaper counterattack. Ethereal vessels tried to retreat, but the enemy weapons followed them, bending space itself to reach their targets. Sir, Foster said, her voice shaking. I'm receiving emergency transmissions from across the fleet. Admiral Thiss's flagship is under attack. They're requesting immediate support. Morrison looked at the tactical display. In less than 20 minutes, the Coalition had lost over 300 ships. The Reapers were pushing forward, their dark hulls now glowing with absorbed energy. They moved through space like sharks through water, tearing apart everything in their path. All ships fall back to secondary positions, came Admiral Thiss's voice over the communication system. Repeat, all ships fall back. We need time to regroup. The retreat was chaos. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning their formations. The faster vessels left their slower allies behind, racing to escape the Reaper advance. Some collided with each other in their panic to get away. Captain, Hayes said, the Kalari and Thrix fleets are withdrawing to the outer system. The Ethereals are requesting permission to return to their home space. Morrison watched the Coalition fall apart. These were the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. and they were running from an enemy they didn't understand. Their energy weapons were useless. Their shields offered no protection. Their speed only delayed the inevitable. "Sir," Carter said urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the Reaper dreadnoughts. They're charging some kind of super weapon." Morrison moved to her station. The sensor readings showed the 12 largest Reaper ships gathering energy from their smaller escorts. Whatever they were planning, it was going to be devastating. "How long until they fire?" Morrison asked. "At current charging rate, maybe 2 hours," Carter replied. "Sir, based on the energy levels, I think they're preparing to destroy entire planets. If they target the nearby inhabited systems..." Morrison didn't need her to finish. Billions of people lived in the systems behind the Kepler defense line. If the Reapers broke through, those worlds would burn. "Captain," Foster said, "we're receiving new orders from Fleet Command. All remaining ships are to retreat to Rally Point Omega. We're to join the withdrawal immediately." Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was waiting for his orders. The smart thing would be to follow the retreat order. The Dakota was just one ship. It couldn't fight an entire enemy fleet. It couldn't save the coalition, but Morrison thought about his grandfather again. About thinking different. About not doing what the enemy expected. "Foster, acknowledge the retreat order," Morrison said. "Tell them we're moving to comply." Hayes frowned. "Sir?" Morrison smiled. "I said tell them we're moving. I didn't say where we're moving to." He turned to Collins. "Chief, how long to bring our real weapons online?" 15 minutes, Captain. Then get started. We're going hunting." Carter looked up from her sensors. "Sir, the Reapers will detect us if we approach their fleet." "Not if we approach them the way they don't expect," Morrison replied. "We're going to show this galaxy what humans do best." "Which is what?" Hayes asked. Morrison watched the Reaper fleet on his view screen, dark ships filled with terrible power, advancing toward helpless worlds. Everyone said they were unstoppable. Everyone said their adaptive technology made them invincible. Everyone was about to learn that humans had never been very good at accepting what everyone said. "We improvise," Morrison said. Captain Jake Morrison watched the Dakota's engines shift from their normal blue glow to a deep red. Chief Engineer Ryan Collins had warned him this would happen when they activated the ship's true capabilities. The change meant they were no longer pretending to be a simple human transport. "All stations report ready, Captain," Commander Lisa Hayes announced from her tactical position. Around the bridge, the crew worked with quiet focus. They all knew what they were about to attempt. Morrison looked at the main display showing the Reaper fleet. 800 dark ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls still glowing from the energy they had absorbed during the battle. The 12 massive dreadnoughts floated at the center like sleeping giants. "Collins, explain to me one more time how this works," Morrison said. The chief engineer moved to the central display and called up a diagram of the Dakota. "Sir, everything the aliens see is real. We do have thick armor plating. We do have basic fusion engines. We do have kinetic weapons. But none of it works the way they think it does." Collins pointed to the ship's hull. "This armor isn't just metal plates bolted together. It's a composite material that absorbs energy instead of reflecting it. When enemy weapons hit us, we don't take damage and we collect power." "And the engines?" Morrison asked. "Built for precision, not speed. We can't outrun a Kalari interceptor, but we can move exactly where we want to go and stop exactly where we want to stop. Perfect positioning, perfect timing." Dr. Helen Carter looked up from her science station. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Reaper technology during the battle. Their adaptive hulls work by studying incoming energy attacks and creating countermeasures in real time. But there's a limitation." "Tell me," Morrison said. "They adapt to energy patterns, plasma frequencies, and quantum signatures. But their system assumes all weapons work that way. They've never encountered anything that doesn't fit the pattern." Weapons Officer Kevin Park turned from his console. "Captain, all kinetic systems show green. We have 48 main guns loaded and ready. Each one can fire a tungsten rod at 30% light speed." Morrison nodded. The Dakota's weapons looked like simple railguns from the outside, but Earth's engineers had built something far more advanced. While other species focused on energy weapons, humans had perfected the art of throwing rocks very, very fast. "Foster, any word from the retreating fleet?" Morrison asked. Lieutenant Amy Foster checked her communications panel. "Sir, most coalition ships have reached the fallback position. They're trying to reorganize, but morale is broken. Admiral Theiss is requesting immediate reinforcements from the inner worlds." "How long until those reinforcements arrive?" "Minimum 6 hours, sir. The Reapers will reach the inhabited systems long before then." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Reaper dreadnoughts were still charging their super weapons. Carter estimated they would be ready to fire in less than 90 minutes. Once those weapons fired, entire planets would die. "Captain," Carter said urgently, "I'm detecting movement in the Reaper fleet. They're starting to advance toward the inner systems." Morrison watched the dark ships begin to move. They accelerated slowly but steadily, like a wall of death rolling forward. Behind them, space itself seemed to bend and twist from their reality-warping drives. "Collins, how long to reach firing position?" "If we use the asteroid field for cover, about 40 minutes, the chief engineer replied. "But sir, once we start shooting, they'll know we're here." "How many shots do you think we'll get before they focus on us?" Park ran calculations on his weapon systems. "Maybe 6 or 7 salvos if we're lucky. After that, they'll adjust their formation to target us directly." Morrison looked around his bridge. 48 main guns, 6 salvos. That meant roughly 300 shots at an enemy fleet of 800 ships. The mathematics were not encouraging. "Carter, which targets should we prioritize?" The science officer pulled up detailed scans of the Reaper fleet. "The dreadnoughts are the primary threat, but they're heavily protected by smaller ships. I'd recommend targeting their escort vessels first. Each dreadnought is surrounded by approximately 20 cruisers and 50 fighters." Hayes nodded. "Take out the escorts, and the dreadnoughts become vulnerable." Morrison made his decision. "Collins, take us into the asteroid field. Park, prepare firing solutions for the escort vessels around the lead dreadnought. Foster, record a message for transmission to the Coalition fleet." "Recording, sir," Foster said. Morrison looked directly at the communication pickup. "This is Captain Morrison of the USV Dakota. We are beginning our attack run on the Reaper fleet. If we fail, remember this: humans don't give up. We find another way. We adapt. We overcome. Morrison out." The Dakota moved quietly through the asteroid field, using the rocky debris to mask its approach. The ship's stealth systems, hidden beneath its crude exterior, made it nearly invisible to long-range sensors. To the Reapers, it would look like just another piece of space debris. 30 minutes to firing position," Collins announced. Morrison watched the tactical display as the Reaper fleet continued its advance. The dreadnoughts had almost finished charging their weapons. Bright energy gathered at the tips of massive gun barrels, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. "Sir," Carter said, "I'm detecting strange readings from our hull. The composite armor is reacting to the Reaper energy fields." Morrison frowned. "Reacting how?" "It's absorbing background radiation from their ships. The closer we get, the more power we're collecting, sir. I think our weapons will be significantly more powerful than normal when we fire." Park looked up from his targeting computer. "Captain, that's impossible. Our kinetic systems use stored power to accelerate the projectiles. If we have more power available, we can shoot harder and faster," Morrison finished. "How much harder?" Carter ran quick calculations. "Maybe 40% increase in muzzle velocity. Instead of 30% light speed, we could achieve 42%. Morrison smiled. The galaxy's most feared enemy was about to make the Dakota's weapons more deadly just by being nearby. It was perfect irony. 15 minutes to firing position, Collins announced. On the view screen, Morrison could see individual Reaper ships now. They were massive, dark things that seemed to absorb light from nearby stars. Their hulls moved like living tissue, constantly, shifting and adapting. He could understand why the Coalition's energy weapons had been useless against them. But energy weapons and kinetic weapons were very different things. "Sir," Foster said, "I'm picking up transmissions from the Coalition fleet. They're asking about our status. Tell them we're proceeding with the mission. Morrison replied. Hayes checked her tactical display. Captain, once we open fire, every Reaper ship in that fleet will target us. The Dakota is tough, but we can't fight 800 ships at once. Morrison nodded. We don't need to fight them all. We just need to hurt them enough to make them think twice. And if they don't think twice? Hayes asked. Morrison looked at the Reaper dreadnoughts, their weapons almost ready to fire on helpless worlds. Then we keep shooting until we run out of ammunition, Collins called out from his station. Firing position in 5 minutes, Captain. Morrison took a deep breath. In 5 minutes, the slow, clumsy, primitive human warship would announce itself to the galaxy's deadliest enemy. The Yow. Reapers had adapted to every weapon they had ever faced. They had never faced anything like what was coming for them. Captain Jake Morrison gave the order that would change everything. All stop. Bring us to firing position. The Dakota drifted to a halt among the asteroids, just 50,000 kilometers from the lead Reaper dreadnought. On the main screen, the massive enemy ship filled their view like a dark mountain in space. Its hull pulsed with absorbed energy from the earlier battle, and Morrison could see the superweapon charging at its bow. Target acquired, Weapons Officer Kevin Park announced. I have firing solutions on all escort vessels around the primary dreadnought. Chief Engineer Ryan Collins watched his power readings climb. Captain, the energy absorption is incredible. We're collecting more power than our systems were designed to handle. Can we use it? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. All that extra energy is feeding directly into our kinetic systems. We're going to hit a lot harder than anyone expects. Dr. Helen Carter looked up from her science station, her face pale with excitement and fear. Captain, I've identified the Reaper adaptation process. Their hulls analyze incoming attacks for about 3 milliseconds, then create countermeasures. But our projectiles will be traveling at 42% light speed. Morrison understood immediately. They'll hit before the light from our muzzle flashes can reach the targets. Exactly. The Reapers won't even know we've fired until our shots are already hitting them. Commander Lisa Hayes checked her tactical display one last time. Sir, we have 24 targets in the first salvo. All escort cruisers protecting the lead dreadnought. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew of 800 humans was about to face the galaxy's most feared enemy, with weapons that looked like museum pieces. But those weapons carried the full weight of human engineering and determination. Fire, Morrison said quietly. The Dakota shuddered as 48 railguns fired simultaneously. There was no flash of energy, no beam of light stretching across space. Just 48 tungsten rods, each one accelerating to impossible speeds in a fraction of a second. The projectiles crossed 50,000 kilometers in less than 0.4 of a second. The first Reaper cruiser exploded before its sensors could even detect the incoming threat. The tungsten rod punched through its adaptive hull like it was made of paper, releasing kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The second cruiser tried to adapt, its hull shifting and changing as it detected the explosion nearby. But the adaptation came too late. Another tungsten rod struck its center mass, tearing the ship apart from the inside out. One by one, the escort vessels around the lead dreadnought died. Each impact created a brilliant flash of light as kinetic energy converted to heat and radiation. In less than 10 seconds, 24 Reaper ships simply ceased to exist. Direct hits on all targets, Park reported, his voice filled with amazement. Switching to the next firing group. The Reaper fleet reacted with shocking speed. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly scattered, trying to locate the source of the attack, but the Dakota remained hidden among the asteroids, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible. Second salvo, fire, Morrison ordered. Another wave of tungsten rods raced across space. This time, they targeted the escort vessels around the second dreadnought. The results were the same: complete destruction. The Reaper's adaptive technology was useless against projectiles that arrived faster than their sensors could track. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Foster called from communications. I'm receiving transmissions from the Coalition fleet. They're asking, what's happening? Their sensors are detecting massive explosions in the Reaper formation. Morrison smiled grimly. Tell them the slow, human warship is finally showing what it can do. The third salvo eliminated the remaining escorts around the two lead dreadnoughts. The massive ships now floated alone, their protective screens gone. But they were adapting to the new threat, turning their massive guns toward the asteroid field. "Captain," Carter warned, "the dreadnoughts are targeting our position. They know we're here now." Morrison nodded. The surprise was over. Now came the real test. "Park, target the lead dreadnought directly. All remaining guns, full power." The weapons officer's hands moved over his controls. "Sir, that ship is over 10 kilometers long. Even our enhanced kinetic weapons might not be enough to destroy it completely." "We don't need to destroy it," Morrison replied. "We just need to hurt it badly enough to make its friends think twice." The fourth salvo was different. Instead of spreading their fire across multiple targets, all 48 railguns focused on a single point, the charging superweapon at the bow of the lead dreadnought. 48 tungsten rods struck within, a few meters of each other, their combined kinetic energy creating an explosion that lit up space like a new star. The dreadnought's forward section simply vanished, taking its planet-killing weapon with it. The massive ship tumbled out of formation, its hull cracking and bleeding atmosphere. The Reaper fleet's response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of dark ships turned toward the asteroid field, their reality-warping weapons charging. Space itself began to bend and twist as they prepared to erase the Dakota from existence. "Sir," Collins called out, "incoming fire from the entire enemy fleet. Impact in 30 seconds. Morrison watched the tactical display as death approached his ship. Streams of twisted energy and matter-destroying fields raced toward their position. Any one of those weapons could destroy the Dakota instantly. All. "Power to forward momentum," Morrison ordered. "Collins, give me everything the engines have." The Dakota shot forward from its hiding place, accelerating directly toward the heart of the Reaper fleet. The enemy weapons passed through the space where it had been hiding, turning several asteroids into cosmic dust. "Captain, what are you doing?" Hayes asked, watching their suicidal course on the display. "Something they won't expect," Morrison replied. "Park continuous fire on any target you can hit. Don't let them predict our path." The Dakota plunged into the enemy formation like a bullet through a crowd. Reaper ships scattered to avoid collision, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Park fired the railguns as fast as they could cycle, sending tungsten rods in every direction. Each shot found its mark. Reaper cruisers exploded, fighters disintegrated, and support vessels broke apart under the kinetic impacts. The enemy's adaptive hulls couldn't process threats coming from so many different angles at such incredible speeds. "Sir," Carter shouted, over the noise of combat. "The remaining dreadnoughts are withdrawing. They're falling back toward the galactic rim." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Reaper fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just an hour ago, was retreating. Over 200 enemy ships had been destroyed or crippled by a single human vessel. "Foster, open a channel to the Coalition fleet," Morrison ordered. "Channel open." "Sir?" Morrison looked directly at the communication pickup. "Coalition forces, this is Captain Morrison. The immediate threat has been neutralized. The Reaper fleet is withdrawing. All worlds in this sector are safe." The response came immediately, from Admiral Theiss. "Captain Morrison, how is this possible? Our sensors show massive destruction in the enemy fleet." Morrison smiled. "Admiral, it turns out that sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Humans learned long ago that if you throw rocks hard enough and fast enough, you can hurt anything." Over the next few hours, as rescue ships recovered survivors and damage reports came in, the full scope of the Dakota's victory became clear. A single human warship had broken the back of the galaxy's most feared enemy, using nothing more than kinetic weapons and clever tactics. Representatives from every coalition species requested meetings with Morrison. The Kalari offered to share their most advanced technologies. The Ethereals proposed trade agreements that would make Earth incredibly wealthy. The Thrix wanted to study human military doctrine. But as Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the last of the Reaper ships disappear into the darkness beyond the galactic rim, he wondered what would happen next. Humanity could no longer hide behind the appearance of being primitive and harmless. They had proven they belonged among the stars. Now they would have to live with the consequences of that proof. "Captain," Carter said quietly, "Earth Command is requesting a full report." Morrison nodded. "Tell them the slow human warship finally got to show what humans do best." "Which is, what, sir?" Hayes asked. Morrison looked out at the stars, thinking about the future his species would face. "We adapt, we overcome, and we never, ever give up."